Thank you for tuning into the Sharing Ageless Wisdom podcast. Our podcast aims to feature senior industry experts in South Florida who will share valuable insight to help our community prepare for aging. We hope that you will benefit from this essential information. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. My name is Diana Cabassi, and today it's my pleasure to introduce you to my friend and trusted advisor, Rouah. Robin is with placement counselors, and her role in the continuum of senior care is to assist families in finding the most appropriate living arrangements for themselves or their loved ones. Hello, Robin. Thank you for coming on the show.
Good morning, Diana. Thank you so much for having me today.
It's my pleasure. I'd like for you to share a little bit about yourself with us today, and also what it is that you do to advocate for us all.
So a little bit about myself. I had been in the importing business for many years. And in 2002, I was out doing a lot of fundraising out in the community and was looking for a job and went out and met this gentleman who owned this agency. I had been very involved in the senior community prior, and he was looking for somebody to help him in this. I knew nothing about placement or anything like that, but had a strong work ethic, which he liked. And he taught me really everything that I know about this industry as far as placement. I have 4 children and really enjoy being out in the community and working with the seniors. So that's basically a little bit of what I do. Placement counselors, we are advocates for the seniors in trying to help them find appropriate assisted living, independent memory care communities when they can no longer live at home. So that is basically our role.
So, Robin, I still remember the day that we met, and I can't believe it's been so long already, but it is what it is. And so, we met through a mutual friend, and as soon as I met you, I knew that you were someone who I could trust. And, you're a great person, and I trust you implicitly with whoever I send to you. And so I'm so happy that you agreed to come and talk with us today.
Thank you, Diana, because I feel the same way. When you meet people and you see how genuine like you are, I have to share this with you. I remember the gentleman we spoke about who was outside of Walmart. If you
Wow.
that you went and helped, and I think he came to me through the Jewish community, and you helped him and you went to visit him. He was living alone, and so that speaks volumes of the kind of person that you are as well.
So that was funny. I had walked into Walmart and I saw him sitting there, and he was in one of these electric scooters.
Yeah.
And I thought, I immediately had a thought, well, I wonder if he's okay, because he seemed troubled. And so I went into Walmart, I don't know, an hour or so later, I walked out and he's still here. And I thought to myself, well, I should really stop and see what I could do for him. And that was the voice in my head. And the other voice said, what, are you crazy? And so I went to my car, and then the good voice in my head said, ask him. And so I did. And he had been sitting there for hours waiting for a ride. And he just lived around the corner. So basically, I took him in to my car and took him to his home. And then later on, he said, you're such an angel. You're my angel. He took my business card and he kissed it. I was like, I didn't do it to expect anything out of it. But anyway, we're not talking about me, Robin. We're talking about you.
That's what we do. But that's what I'm trying to say. That is what we do, right? It's just, it's in our, like I say, it's in our DNA. We
Right.
just do this.
So, tell me what families can expect when they contact you.
So oftentimes family will come to me so we do a lot of networking in the hospitals and the nursing homes, in the communities. When they reach out to me, it's usually when their loved one can no longer return back to home. So I like to do a very in-depth intake. So this way I know exactly the situation with the individual. Are they able to walk? How much care do they need? What are the finances like? I get very involved. So an intake can sometimes take, 30 minutes to an hour, because I want to make sure that the places that I'm going to recommend to this family I don't want to waste their time. So I want to make sure that it's going to fit their needs. And there's a lot that really goes into that. So we basically hold the family's hand, and there's oftentimes multiple siblings, a lot of back and forth between the families. Most times I'll go and I'll evaluate the patient on my own. But there are so many different kinds of assisted living communities. So I need to know which is going to be the right place for that particular individual. And then I'll usually recommend 3 or 4 places for them to look at, and just really walk them through the whole process, because it is very involving. It is very complicated, as you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nowadays, so many people look online for resources. Can you share with me a little bit about what makes a difference with placement counselors as opposed to using just online resources?
So the online resources, they don't target specifically, they don't hone in on really what the needs are. And a lot of them don't know even the licensure that a lot of these communities have. So if somebody just gets online and is looking for assisted living and they say they are in Hollywood, let's say, so these online agencies will just basically target an area of, let's say, Broward. Sometimes they even go into Dade because they don't really know the area of Southeast Florida. Um, if a family is looking, let's say their loved one is diabetic, or they have specific needs, or they're not able to walk, maybe they're not even weight bearing, a lot of these assisted living communities would not be able to accept that particular resident. And to me, it just becomes a lot of wasted time for the families. So, a lot of the assisted living communities, some have an extended care license, some have limited nursing license, some can take feeding tubes where others cannot. It's so individualized. So that's the main difference to what we do as opposed to the online agency. We really target exactly. If I have somebody that has a feeding tube, I'm not sending them to just a standard assisted living facility.
Right.
As it is, the families are so overwhelmed with what is going on, and a lot of the families don't even live here.
Right. That's something that has happened in our society nowadays. People go away to college and they stay. They don't
Yeah,
necessarily come back home. And so then their parents are in a different state and trying to manage care from afar, and sometimes even from different countries. I've had clients where their children are in Europe,
right.
and then there's a time change difference that you need to deal with. But, um, you know, one of the things that actually just came up as a concern for one of my families yesterday or the day before is that the mom is in a small group home, and she has dementia, and unfortunately she has gotten to the point where she is bedridden and cannot move. She's like a wet noodle. They can't move her, right? And so she really needs to be moved because they develop bed sores if they're not being moved, and their position isn't being changed. And so he called me up and he's like, Diana, what do you suggest I do? And the reality is that not every facility, like you were saying, is set up or even able to use a Hoyer lift to transfer someone. A Hoyer lift is like an elevator. You
Correct,
put
correct.
you in this little sling and the person can be moved. And so really, the only options, I think, in that case is to either take them home and hire help at home or put them in a nursing home, because I understand that assisted livings cannot use that equipment. Am I right?
So an assisted living cannot use a Hoyer lift. That is correct. But if this person is in a group home, you're talking about one of those small, residential. Now we're really going to depending on which group home the person is in, because some of them will do a 1 or 2 person transfer without using a Hoyer lift. The other option is sometimes if the individual is on hospice, then they can remain in the group home, even some of the larger communities, but they could remain in the group home. So I think in that particular situation, it would depend which group home the individual is actually in. Maybe that particular one can't manage the care, but maybe another one could before you look at a nursing home. Also, in these group homes, most of them have a standard license, but some of them do have an ECC license, which is an extended congregate care license. So they can do a higher level of care than your standard group home.
And there you go. That's why we can't rely on these online resources. You know, it occurred to me that we started talking about a specific individual with a specific need, but can you maybe elaborate a little bit on the different types of homes there are? What the advantage and disadvantage may be for the larger assisted living, or whether someone is in memory care, what the difference basically is between the different types of
Big
communities
difference.
that exist.
Big difference. So recently we spoke about, I have an individual who's in a larger assisted living facility, and they feel they're not getting adequate care in a larger place, because in the larger assisted living you pay for these are in rentals, let's say, so you pay for the room and board of the apartment that you're in, and then depending on the level of care that you require, you pay either based on levels of care, or sometimes they have them whatever your individual needs are. If they need transport to the dining room, if they need help with dressing, bathing, so on and so forth, medication management. So the larger places are set up mostly for that. They have a lot of activities, they have transportation, but sometimes you have an individual in there who requires more care than they're able to provide. So oftentimes I'll get a call that they can no longer be in a large place, so we need to look at a nursing home. But oftentimes nursing homes that's not the answer for this particular individual, because to me, if you don't need the skill of a nurse, meaning if they don't have a trach or anything like that that requires the skill of a nurse 24 hours, I usually go and look at these smaller group homes. If I have an individual in this particular case where we have this individual that really is not going to the dining room in the large assisted living, they're not utilizing any of the activities, they're not able to transfer, and then actually the family needs to be providing private duty on top of the care that the facility is able to provide. So in that situation, I do a lot with the small group homes, because if really what they need is just a higher level of care, even if they're not able to walk, they may just be able to stand and bear weight with 2 people, with 1 person on either side assisting them. So that's what we would call just being able to stand and pivot. They can certainly be in a smaller residential place. They're nice because their meals are home cooked. They're more individualized to the person. There's usually 2 aides on staff for 6 residents. So it's like living at home with a few other people and 2 aides around the clock. So we have that kind of situation. And I get that a lot when people can no longer stay in a large place, they need to go to something smaller. Um, the other communities in the larger, like we were discussing, you have assisted living, you have independent living, you have separate memory care communities within the larger buildings. A lot of it depends on what the budget is of the family. If you have a long-term care policy, that would help pay for it. A lot of folks are now on the long-term Medicaid programs. So some of these larger assisted living communities, even the smaller ones, they will work with the long-term Medicaid program. Um, a lot of the larger buildings have specialty licenses. So if I have, for instance, somebody like we talked about a feeding tube, then I could rely on two or three, let's say, larger places that would be able to accept the patient with the feeding tube. So there's a lot of different options out there. People will often call me and say, well, we live east. We don't want to go west of 95. So what can you recommend? And, I'm in these buildings a lot. I know a lot of what the care that they're able to provide. So we're able to give that individualized service to the family to direct them to the correct building.
So it's basically a one-on-one relationship that you are creating with the family to identify exactly what the person's needs are so that you could give them all of their various options.
Correct.
Is that right? Yeah.
Correct. And it gets so confusing for the families. So many times I spoke with somebody this morning and, they often say to me, I've never done this before. I know a lot of us have never done this before, but they need help navigating through the system because it's so complicated and there's so many choices out there.
So do you find that there are any common struggles with families that you work with, or even if it's a generality, I think maybe, do we find that people are wanting to stay home? Is that something that you
Yeah.
find? Yeah.
So oftentimes, there's so many situations, Diana. Oftentimes the individual themselves, they only want to go home. So that's a whole other thing because if the family knows, like I have a situation now, the husband is in a rehab, he does have some dementia, the wife can no longer care for him. So in the meantime, I've been working with her to look at some different memory care communities close to the area where she lives. He thinks he's going home. But because of the dementia, he doesn't quite understand. So I went to see him. I've been speaking with the wife and really trying to give her options on what to say to him. The biggest thing is often, you can't ask, even though they've been married for 60 plus years, you can't really ask them, are you okay with moving to a place? Because nobody wants to, right? So oftentimes, I'll suggest that they speak to their loved one and just say, okay, you don't have to stay in this rehab any longer, but we're going to go to a different rehab and it's more like a step down from where we are currently. And when they ask, well, okay, then when am I going home? I like to keep it very open-ended, and they'll just say, well, we'll see how you do. And oftentimes, it works out very well in a lot of these communities. Our spouses, there's a lot of stress on the spouses as well to care for their loved ones. And that's not an easy thing. There's a lot of guilt. But, often I say, like this particular lady I was working with, I said, you must take care of yourself. You have to come first. And if your husband is in a place where he's well cared for, you can go and visit him. You can spend as much time as you want, but your health is first and foremost, because what happens if something happens to you?
I know the statistics are crazy on how many caregivers actually predecease the
Correct.
person that they're caring for because, there's care is almost 24/7, in
Correct.
particular if someone has some form of dementia, because every day is a new day and things evolve, and the person who is caring for them is oftentimes elderly as well.
Right.
And typically I find that, the wife takes care of the husband until the husband until she can no longer care for him. Even if he's no longer able to be cared for at home, she still insists on caring for him at home.
Mhm.
And so basically, the women are left without their husbands, and then they need care, and then there's no more money for that care. And
Yeah.
things are quite complicated, and many families have to deal with that as well. They use up the money in caring for one of the spouses, and then the other spouse is left, with no help. So,
That's what happens, and we don't realize sometimes it gets so complicated, and I'm sure we can write novels on the situations and the stories. I we probably get uh, 500 calls a year, on an average, and we help those 500 people. I may not help them find places to go to because a lot of times I can't say no to anybody. So I'll get calls from the hospital from homeless people that they have limited income. We do a lot with what we call supportive homes as well, where it's, let's say, under $1,000 for them to be in a house setting where they're not on the street. We try our best to help whoever we can. I work with families and help them try to explain their finances. It's amazing how many people, when I ask, what's your income or what is your assets, people don't understand. They don't know. So when I work with them and try to explain, okay, if they have so much in income and so much in assets, they could really afford to go to assisted living. People don't realize that. If they need an attorney, I recommend an attorney to them. If they need a recommendation on home care, such as yourself, I make the recommendation. So we're always trying to help and direct people to different venues out there, to different there's so many people that can provide access and can help the individuals, but they don't know. It's so, even us, um I might be sidetracking, but when the owner of this agency started it, gosh, 27 years ago, there was maybe 4 placement agencies. Now I don't even know how many placement agencies there are, but people just need the tools and they need so much help, Diana.
I know. Well, that's the whole reason for this podcast.
Yeah.
In the years that I've been in this industry, I came from a very different world, and I've only been in this industry for 13 years.
Mhm.
This year, it's an honor, actually.
Yeah.
But you know, I didn't know anything about here. I'm running a company. I know nothing about the industry that I'm running the company for. But of course, over the years, I've learned, and that's why I believe it's so critical
Yeah.
to share this wisdom, and therefore the podcast. But anyway, circling back around to what we have in this conversation.
Sorry, I went sideways.
That's okay, honey. So, what is something about placement counselors that you wish to share with people? I mean, is there anything that you haven't mentioned that you think is important for people to know?
I, like I said before, um, we're individualized. So when we get that call, you bring up something before. I'm on a lot of Facebook groups. And I think we talked about this before, different social media. And oftentimes somebody is looking for nursing home or something for their parent. And I'll read a lot of the comments. Oh, I went to this place. It was very good for, my mother or father, or try that place, but the request was not specific in what the person was looking for. They were just looking for a nursing home, not knowing why the person was looking for the nursing home. So in this one case, I responded and I said, well, it's good that everybody's making suggestions, but until I really know, I would love to help you. Here's my information, but until I really know the needs of your mom or dad, I can't make a recommendation because I don't know exactly what they're looking for or what the situation is. And they did reach out to me. And to me, that's just, there's so much out there that until you really specialize and hone in on what the person is needing and looking for, and she wound up not I think she wound up keeping it was the mom. She wound up keeping her at home, but at least I was able to give her the information and the tools and other people to contact without it just being, try this place, and so on.
Right. So
So,
basically, so what I hear and what I have experienced is that you help people wherever it is that they need the help. And if that involves placing them somewhere, then that's good. But if that involves counseling them on what else they could do, then that's fine for you too, right?
yeah, totally. That's why I said if we get, I don't know, just an average 500 calls a year, maybe I would actually help place 20 or 25% of that. But that's why we're here. It's just we never know the direction, what's going to happen. Sometimes, yeah, I've been with this company 22 years, so a very long time. And oftentimes I'll get a call, "Hi, do you remember me? You helped find a place for my dad, but now he needs more care," or my mom needs help, or anything like that. So we're just here to really help the community, whatever we can do, and let them know that we exist, that there is help for them.
And that's why Robin's wonderful.
So,
Um, so,
thank you.
what's the best way for people to reach you, Robin?
Yes. So the website is placementcounselors.com. And we also, my boss started a magazine directory several years ago, and we have a website for that as well.
Okay.
And I can give you that website. It's 55, the number 55, and then the words plus magazine.com. So it's 55plusmagazine.com. And that's a wonderful directory for people who need information, listings of hospitals, nursing homes, different services out in the community that they can look at. We used to do a print magazine, and now we've got a full website that they can look at as well.
Well, that's great. Wherever we can get information that is accurate,
Yes.
is important because there's so much misinformation out there, right?
Yeah.
So, Robin, is there anything else that you would like to share that perhaps you haven't mentioned?
Um, I think that's all of it. Diana, I am so grateful to people like yourself. Like I was speaking with somebody that works a liaison from a nursing home, and it's just so wonderful to connect with people that do this for the right reasons, for a purpose. It is so complicated out there. People just I recently got a call from a gentleman in New York whose parents were here, both needed care. Him and his brother both lived in New York. And the mom had dementia, and they needed to hire 24-hour care, but there was nobody here to stay with them. It's so, you know, so they actually came to me through Palm Beach Fire Rescue, somebody that I connected with. And I was able to make some recommendations to at least get the mother into a group home quickly until the family got here and figured out what else they were going to do. So
Mhm.
sometimes I can work with a family for years and they're not ready because oftentimes they're not ready. And sometimes I have to move them within the day. We don't charge for our service. It is a free service. All the communities that we work with, and I would say close to about 500 different communities, Tri-County. So we cover really Broward, Dade, Palm Beach, and even into Martin County, and some on the West Coast as well. So the communities pay a consulting fee to the agency. So my job is really to direct the family to the correct community for their loved one. They have the opportunity to go and look at it, ask whatever questions they like. Their loved one would be evaluated to determine how much care they need and so on. We also do a lot, if I didn't notice, if I didn't mention, with hospice. So hospice is a whole other, we work with a lot of patients who are on the hospice in the inpatient unit, and sometimes, sadly, if they're not imminent, they can't stay on the unit. So I'll help the families find some group homes as well for them. Hospice, if a lot of people don't know, will follow their loved one. If they are on hospice, they will follow them wherever they are, if they're in a large community, a smaller community. So that's a great resource as well, as I'm sure you know.
Absolutely. And sometimes people think that hospice is just for end of life.
Correct.
But, that's not necessarily an accurate statement, because people can be on hospice for palliative care, for keeping them comfortable.
Correct.
And that could go on for months and months. And so sometimes even years. And then sometimes even people come off of hospice because
I
they're
was
well.
just going to say, they come off, they come back on.
Right.
Hospice is wonderful. And even they're doing a lot more than they did before. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. And I think it's so wonderful you do this podcast, because for as long as we're doing this, some people will say, oh, I didn't know that your agency existed.
Right.
And I think it's wonderful that we all work together. And if I can help them, I'll send them to you. I send them to so many other people that we network in the community. And oftentimes they're not ready. So I'll send them, let's say, to you. And then when they are ready, you call me back. And, the network is just so amazing, Diana. I'm truly grateful.
So, one of the things that I always say is that every individual is an individual.
Mm.
And with that, everyone's desires and needs are also different.
Mm.
So that's why using a service like yours, which they don't need to pay for,
Correct.
is so invaluable. So anyway, I am so grateful for you, Robin, for what you do, for who you are, and for sharing all this ageless wisdom
Yeah.
with our viewers and our listeners. So thank you so much, Robin, for being on our show today. And I look forward to many more years. Well, not too many more years, but
No.
hopefully I'll be retired in many more years, right? So anyway, for as long as I am working and living, I will be grateful to you, my dear.
Thank you. And the same here. And you are an angel. You truly are. I appreciate you.
Oh.
And thank you again for having me. If anybody needs anything, you can, even if they don't know, just reach out and at least let us help direct you to, the right place.
Exactly. Wonderful, my dear. Again, Robin, thank you so much for this valuable information. And for all of you who tuned in, we'll put Robin's information in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed this information and found this conversation valuable. If you want more content like this in the future, please subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media. And let us know what you think about the show and what topics you would like to hear about in the future. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Have a wonderful day or evening.